Hello guys, and welcome to a new Wargame with Dragon video today by me, Vulcan. So with the new South African DLC coming out, I thought I'd make a video today sort of going through the decks that I've made so far, trying out South Africa, and kind of making some comments about where I think these units are going to be best used and why I'm kind of choosing them in these situations. So first of all, I'm going to jump into my standard South Africa deck. This has no specialization. You just get the extra 20% availability that you wouldn't otherwise get in, say, like a standard blue 4 deck. So let's jump into the logistics tab. So I've got a fob, and we're using SAMIL 50 cargo trucks. Now, I quite like the cargo trucks over the SAMIL 100s, like the SAMIL 50s over the SAMIL 100s. Main reason being is the SAMIL 50s you can kind of like bring in just as many as you need, as opposed to like over investing into 2,400 supply and then these potentially getting killed, especially since you only get like 6 of them compared to the 17 SAMIL 50s. And obviously if the SAMIL 50s run out, you just send them back to base, back to your fob, you get more supply, you come back. So I think the SAMIL 50s are fine. You bring in like maybe 2 or 3 of them to sit by your AA, keep them stocked up. Then I've got the Caspian BV. I think maybe like the Ratel's better, but I kind of like the sort of point cost. They've made it quite difficult to choose like a CV, because it goes like 110, 115, 120, 125, 130. I think the 120 is like the best trade-off. You get the 1 top armor, but you don't get like a 50 cal or the 2 front armor. But you know, I feel like that's a decent trade-off there. I do have a commandant. I'm actually bringing this in the Ratel 60. Not sure this is the best transport for it, but I thought it was quite funny. It gives you like 4 of these Ratel 60s, which basically act as like mortar carriers if you need them. It's like having a card of like the AML 20s in the support tab, or what is the like Eland 60s. You don't get as many of them, of course, but it just gives you a useful transport after you unload your commandant. And obviously you can smoke yourself off if you get into a pickle. In the infantry tab, I have the Parabat as my mainline infantry. I thought that these Parabat would be useful against the like enemy mainline infantry. Like usually you'd come up against like something like Proletari out of the Yugo, and they're going to be like 10-point squads. So if you like go one up with the 15-point squads, I think they trade quite well. And I think the Parabat has a reasonably good loadout to trade in forests and in towns. And then I've got, of course, got the SASF 90. These are just really good. The Appelas and the Stinger makes them a no-brainer, absolutely. And I got the Caspian K car with those to get the nice high veteran 20 mil, which is going to make that a bit more accurate and do more damage. I've also got the Parabat in K cars as well. Like the K cars are just really good with the 20 mil attached. Then I've got Parabat 90 in K cars as well. The Parabat 90 have like a much better machine gun, as well as the decent AT weapon. So you bring like 1 Parabat 90 for every normal Parabat you bring. Or say 1 Parabat 90 for like every 2 Parabat you bring, sorry. And then you'd have like a nice sort of mix between cost-efficient trading infantry and like an AT launcher that can take care of like difficult transports or tanks and stuff at close range. Then I've got a card of the Buffalo 85s. I think the Buffalo 85s are definitely worth bringing. You only get 1 card of them, but they are 15-man shock squads with a Milan F1. And I think that's the main reason you bring them, because they can kind of control ground quite nicely around them with the 2,450 meter range. You can take out enemy transports. You can side shot enemy heavy tanks and get kills that way. I feel like the Buffaloes just provide like a really solid threat on the map wherever you put them. Like whatever town you put them in, they're just like really awkward to get rid of. And yeah, they can project their damage very far onto vehicles. And then finally, I've just got like the cheap option. I've got a Bokop in Ratel 20s. These are just your standard cheap regular infantry. with a 20mm APC, which is very fast. This is a very, very versatile APC, and that's the main reason I'm bringing them, is for that Retail 20. You can, of course, drop off the Bock-Ops wherever you want, have them run across the field into gunfire to reveal enemy forces, but the Retail 20s will be the ones really like doing the damage and zooming around all over the place and finding things to kill. So that's my infantry tab here. In the support tab, I chose to bring in the Cactus SAHV. You only get one card of these. Same with the Ruacat SA or ZA-HVM. I think both of these are pretty much no-brainers. I've got them both upvetted as well at hardened veterancy, making sure the missiles hit on these AA pieces when you've got such low like initial ammo, I think is very important. When in situations where you haven't set up your supply yet, that can certainly allow you to get kills where you would otherwise not. So I think the extra veterancy is good. And I have the Ruacat ZA-35s, which provide the sort of AAA at the close range. Is just good for ripping helicopters out the sky and sort of stunning enemy aircraft before they get too close. But you do have to kind of keep these close to the front line in order to be effective, because their range is, you know, limited to a certain extent. And I'd say in general, you've got to be pretty careful with the support tab of the South Africans, because you don't really have many long-range options. The longest option you do have is the 4,200 meter range of the Ruacat ZA-HVM. And this is vulnerable to being hit by seeds, so you're going to have to make sure you manage them properly, especially if you're upvetting them and you've only got 4 of them. So there we go. Finally, I brought in the Rhino, super speedy boy with the long-range gun. Very, very decent dispersion, best dispersion in the game. Very accurate range, good for being microed around. Fire a couple shots, make sure you move, and then fire them again. And just continue that sort of process where you fire a couple shots and move, and then you will kill all the targets you really need to, because by the time your opponent realizes their unit's being hit, it will probably be dead because you're pretty accurate, depending on what you're firing at, of course. Moving on to the tank tab, I do have the logins. I think it's important, if you're building just like a pure South Africa deck, you do have at least some super heavy presence on the map. It's not going to trade very well into other super heavies, but it's a good unit to have to clean up other sort of like lighter tanks, like medium tanks and stuff. So it will trade very well into things like T80s and T72s. But it won't trade so well into something like a Challenger 2 or like a T80UM or like a T72BU, for example. You know, it's going to be outclassed by those sorts of tanks, but it is still definitely worth bringing. And I've got both the cards of the Ruacat 76s for 40 points with 60% stabilizer. These are fantastic for just zooming around and picking off anything that isn't a heavy tank. And they can just get into really, really awesome positions very quickly and flank very well. You've got the Ruacat 105 again. I think these are one of the units you have to bring if you're making a South Africa deck. It is a prototype. You've got like the 105mm rounds, so you've got the extra AP. Very, very strong at flanking tanks. Just bring in like 4 of these, send 2 either side of the tank you're trying to kill, and you'll probably kill it quite quickly, because the accuracy means you're almost always hitting, and you've got decent rate of fire and decent AP. So side shots are definitely going to hit hard. Then I have a card of the Oliphant Mark 1Bs. I think these are actually pretty good with the 10 round per minute rate of fire. Great for picking off transports and sort of lighter tanks. So I've got a card of those. Then in the Recon tab, I brought 2 cards of the Ruacat 76s. I think these cards are just so damn good. With the very good optics and the ability to move at 120 km/h speed with that armament is just such a beautiful combination that allows you to flank so damn well and find targets for your aircraft or just targets for it to kill itself. Very good. You're going to have to watch out for these a lot when you're playing against South Africa, because they will be looking for your CVs. I do have a card of the Pala Pathfinders. Really good close-range infantry squad to take on enemy infantry squads. And of course provide you with the Recon ability. And I'm currently trying out the XH1 Alphas as Recon helicopters, but also kind of more to get engaged with other units. So great for just picking off enemy transports and stuff at range. And just being an absolute nuisance, really. That's what they're good at, especially for their cost. Then in the vehicle tab, I've just got one card of the Ratel Z3A1s. These I have brought in at hardened veterancy just to really push that accuracy to the max, make sure that we're hitting with every single missile. And yeah, I think these have performed quite well so far when I've been trying them out. None of the other units in this tab, the vehicle tab, really seem worth it. Then we have the helicopters. I've got a card of the Ruhrvalk and a card of the XTP-1 Beta 90. I don't think the Beta 87 is really worth it with the infrared missiles, but the Ruhrvalk has a place when you need, like when you desperately need some like air-to-air helicopter play. Otherwise, it's just kind of there as an HGM platform. And the XTP Beta just does the same thing, HGM platform, but does have the rockets to kind of help shut down infantry pushes especially. And since it can sit quite far back, it's quite nice. I was tempted to add some like Alouette K cars into like this deck, maybe instead of like the Ruhrvalk, just to have more cheap disposable helicopters, which can be again a real nuisance. But I think the Ruhrvalk, just about made it into the deck. Finally, the air tab. We got a full air tab here. We've got Cheetah D2s at veteran. They have to come in at veteran with the Griffin SAL missiles. They are very, very strong. Definitely worth having. It's the same bomb that the Nighthawk uses. Then you've got the Cheetah Cs. I think, honestly, in this case, I'm probably actually going to impromptu just change that out to the Carver. I think the Carver performs better than the Cheetah, and is probably worth it in most cases. Then I've got the Cheetah D with the hardened. These are your seed variant. So I think just bringing in all of the aircraft at like highest veterancy is generally a good idea, just so that they do hit their missiles. Because it can be really frustrating if you bring them in at like low veterancy, like Rookie, for example, and then they've only got like 55% accuracy and they kind of miss their target and then get shot down by the AA they're trying to kill. That's like really, really annoying. So being able to bring them in at like hardened, get the extra accuracy on that seed missile means you're going to hit a lot more often. Then you got the Buccaneers. I'm currently kind of trying these out. I really want them to be good, but yeah, it's something that remains to be seen. 2 veteran at the moment to get the max out of the accuracy on these missiles. Then I have the Mirage F1CZ for anti-helicopter duties. With 900 km/h speed, I haven't really got a decent chance to try out how good these really are, and if they manage to fire enough infrared missiles quickly enough. Because with a 2,100 meter range against helicopters and a 900 km/h speed, they're going to have to get these missiles off pretty quickly in order to shoot down a helicopter in one run. But then I have, like, obviously the Carver, which I just switched out just then for the Cheetah C. There you go. That's like a standard South Africa deck. That's what I've set it up as at the moment. I think the standard South Africa deck is okay. It's not great because it can be countered quite hard by a lot of medium armor. I think things like Chieftain Mark 5s, M84s, just any like strong high armor medium tanks are going to do very well against the Ruhrcats, because although the Ruhrcats have like quite a nice armament, it's not enough to punch through like 15 front armor, which some tanks that cost like 60-70 points have. And so you're going to end up like running into a brick wall, and therefore flanking is obviously your best bet. But assuming your opponent isn't or is paying attention, that's not always easier said than done. So yeah, it's an interesting deck. You kind of have to rely on the logins to take out those medium tanks that are in the way of your Ruhrcats, and then you can use the Ruhrcats to kind of exploit a opening. And also, like, if you get a really good start, like the Ruhrcats can absolutely dominate the map like very, very quickly. So it's quite a volatile deck, I would say. All right, let's have a look at the other deck that we have set up here. So I've got a South African motorized deck. I'm just going to show you guys what you can build. So You can get motorized, armored, support, marines, and airborne. You can't do mechanized because there's just really not that many tracked units under South Africa. But I set up a motorized one, and that does give you the extra XP for recon vehicles and infantry. All units of type recon vehicles and infantry cost -1 activation point, and +2 slots available for recon vehicles and infantry. So I set up one already. So we'll have a quick look at this. I quite like the South African motorized. It's basically the South African force seems to be set up for this deck. It's pretty much the way that South Africa is intended to be played, and having the extra slots is actually really, really nice in the infantry tab and the recon tab. Let's have a look. My logistic tab is pretty much exactly the same as you've seen before. Got the commandants in the Ratel 60s, still doing that. Got the Caspian BB, Samuel 50s, and FOB. But the infantry tab is a little bit different. So I've got the Bokops again in the Ratel 20s, like my cheap infantry option in the cheap APC. I've got the Padabats and Padabat 90s in K cars. We got the SAS F90 in the Caspian Mark II this time. So a little bit cheaper transport for the SASF. And then I've got same deal with the Buffalo 85s. But I've got 2 extra units here. We've got the Bokops coming in with the Caspian Mark II, so an even cheaper infantry option, just for kind of like spamming about. And then I've got the Inflict. I really wanted to try these out, so I did add them to this deck. These are the ones with the 4 HE power at the 1925 meter range. Good defensive unit against infantry. And that's really what I want to like try and see what I can do with them. Just like put them in positions where you're like protecting a flank, and then I hope that they can kind of like pick off infantry when it starts to attack them. In the support tab, I've actually filled it out this time. I've got both the Cactus SAHV and the Ruhrkat ZA HVM and the Ruhrkat ZA35. So these are exactly the same as my other South Africa deck. We've got the Rhinos in there as well. But I also have a card of the Yistervarg. I'm really convinced that these could be quite powerful in supporting like early pushes because of their stabilizer. So yeah, I really want to try this out and see how they get on. And you do get a lot of them. There's like 19 on a card at trained. In the tank tab, it's pretty much the same as before. You're just missing one Oliphant variant and the login. So I've got all of the Ruhrkats and the Oliphant Mark 1Bs, like pretty much exactly the same as my standard South Africa deck, except from I don't have the logins. Now, I feel like not having the logins is kind of scary because you don't really have a way of dealing with even the medium tanks very well, which have high front armor. You have to rely very, very hard on your HGMs, which aren't even that good. So it is a bit scary. You're going to have to look for a lot of flanking shots. In the Recon tab, though, both the Ruhrkat cards, of course. The Ruhrkat 76 with the Recon is very, very good. I've got the Para Pathfinders in the Buffel, so 10-point transport. I've got the XH1 Alphas, still messing around with these, seeing how good they can be. I've got another card, a second card of the Para Pathfinders. Like, having 2 cards of this infantry is just so nice. Like, as anti-infantry infantry, they are really, really good. Like, just like the Formosa are. I've got a card of standard Alouettes, and like the Recon Alouettes. Having like very good optics on a helicopter is actually really nice. So you can dot some of these around for a bit better optics than the XA1 Alpha offers, and with better line of sight than the infantry offers. And I've got a card of like the trackers for just some like cheap infantry options with just the Samuel 50 truck. So as cheap as you can get with the transport. In the vehicle tab, I've got both of the cards of the Ratel ZT3A1s at the veterancy. So yeah, very effective. I think these are very cost-effective ATGM vehicles, and they can kill quite a lot of stuff quite quickly because of the way that they reload. Then there's the helicopters. I've got the XTP Beta and the Ruhrvalk again, same setup as I had in the normal South Africa deck. And then I think my air tab is almost exactly the same. So I've got the Carver with the Mirage F1 CZs, and then I've got the anti-radar missile Cheetah D, Cheetah D2 with the SAR missiles, and then the Buccaneer with the air-to-ground AT missiles. And that's pretty much it. So there we go. Now, one thing to bear in mind is that when you create a normal blue 4 deck, I'll just probably just throw one together. You can, of course, get some of the South African units. So anything that's not basically prototype. And that does include things like the Rotel HGM vehicle, the Ruacat 76s. I think the Ruacat Recon one is also there. So this is like a super, super powerful vehicle for Blue 4, like normal Blue 4 and Blue 4 Motorized, because it does come under the Motorized type as well. So yeah, there are some really good units in here for the South Africans that can be added to different decks. So like having the availability of the cactus there. I don't know if the French one is there. Let's just add the French in. The Crow Town. It is, okay. So it's pretty much exactly the same, yeah. I guess it just gives you another card of Crowdowns then, technically, if you need them. But this is probably going to be one of the best artillery pieces for Blue 4 now that they can get. Like, there is obviously quite a lot of options here. You have something like the... I don't know if the Alpha one's really a good comparison. I think the best one before that was probably here. The Cardom, maybe? I think this is just a M110. Yeah. I don't think there really is anything that really matches up to it. Like, having the ability to bring the Rhino is actually massive. Yeah. That's a really, really nice option. Because you've got the Caesar, but that I think is prototype to French. The Swedish would have the Beacon. I guess the Beacon's okay. But yeah, further the dispersion there being 2,730, this Rhino is super good for Blue 4 General. But yeah, definitely a lot to sort of like consider here with the new South Africa DLC. I think it's going to make a lot of the Blue 4 decks a bit more scary. And their own decks are also pretty scary as well. A lot of people, I think, originally look at the South African DLC and go, oh, that looks OP, oh, that looks OP, oh, that speed's crazy. But upon testing it and having watched like Razman play and so on, like people who are more familiar with Wargame than I am, especially in like a 1v1 scenario, it doesn't seem that way. Like the standard South Africa deck, I would say is pretty weak. I think the motorized version is probably just generally better because it basically enforces the way that South Africa plays and takes away all of those tracked units that kind of like would slow you down. And the main thing about South Africa is it's very, very fast. And that's what you've got to play around with. You can't just ram into your enemy. Any maps where you are hitting your enemy head on, you're just not going to have a good time because enemy medium tanks are just going to ruin your Ruacats. But any time you can get like a good flank off on like quite a wide map, I think these are going to really, really show off how good they can really be. And I think that's a cool thing. I think that, you know, introducing a DLC where a faction has distinct advantages but also weaknesses is something that this seems to have done very, very well, and props off to Eugen for not just making like massive feature creep, you know. It does happen occasionally. I think everybody knows that. But yeah, in this case, I think, you know, they've made a really, really solid, unique sort of faction and added it to the game. So anyway, other than this quick video about the decks and sort of my overall opinions on South Africa, I am probably going to try and get you guys a gameplay. I'll see what I can do about that. I kind of want it to be a PvP gameplay rather than a skirmish versus AI, because I don't feel like the skirmish versus AI is really like the best way to show off the deck. Like, I've done a few games with the South Africans where I've kind of just like ruined a very hard AI by rushing them with Ruacats. It's not the you know, pinnacle of gameplay. So it's, yeah, I'll see what I can do for you guys in getting you a gameplay. If I can't, we'll probably just play some games when it comes out, and I'll put up some videos then. But that's it for now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this look at the decks I've put together and some of my opinions on the game. That's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.